Hello, Naiguan Films. My name is Lloyd Lee Choi. I'm here to talk about my new feature film, Lucky Lu, that is premiering at Directors Fortnight in Cannes. So after we premiered the short film in 2022 in Cannes, I remember finishing the film and just feeling there was a bigger story to tell. There's a longer, more complex story, and it felt it was unfinished almost with the short film. So I spent about a year writing and developing the script for Lucky Lu, and I just felt there was more story to tell. I found, especially during the pandemic and COVID lockdowns, these like kind of men would zip by you and deliver food every single day, and you'd see them just for a moment, and I thought that was, quite interesting to look into. So, with New York City, I think when you think of the city, you think of yellow cabs, but I also think of delivery drivers and how hundreds pass by you every day, and so I just wanted to tell one story about one man and his life, and really try to humanize that one delivery driver. I think they're often overlooked and blend into the background, invisible, and they're just here to serve you. But I wanted to kind of dig into their life and their story, and again, they have hopes and dreams and heartbreak, and I wanted to showcase that in an emotional way. Yeah, I mean, that's something that was very important to me and to our sound designer, is to create that oppressive landscape. I think visually you can create it, but I think actually the sound makes you feel a little more trapped in. So, all the sounds that we put in there are, real sounds from that area. I think it was important to, especially in Chinatown, there's a subway that goes actually overground. And it's sort of this echoing sound you hear all throughout the city, throughout that area. And it's whether you're really close and underneath and it's like sort of shaking your bones, or you're further away and you hear the echo. It's always kind of there. It's like a reminder of where you are, and it's sort of a bit of a narrative tool to show where this character is in time and place, but also a way to kind of build the tension and showing sort of and representing how he's feeling and his sort of emotional state. I think, with the sort of the palette of the image, I think it's sort of what the city gave us, but we were very intentional. I think there's a lot of kind of blues and greens and grays in the first part, but as
but not like the near effect.
No, we kind of avoided that, I think, trapping, right? And we wanted to kind of just be truthful, be grounded. What is New York for real, but we wanted to kind of build, and as his daughter comes into the story, colors start to shift a bit more. We start to get into adding a new color for the palette every so often, not too aggressively, but it starts to build. Yeah, I mean, I think they were apart for so many years, right? And they're trying to communicate over video chats, and I think this idea of the screen. Yeah, I mean, so really the story starts with the family reuniting over many years, after many years. So I think, through the phone, they're able to present themselves as sort of like who they want to be presented as, right? So, the daughter has a perception of her dad as this sort of perfect father, but when she finally sees him, suddenly, like, he looks different. He doesn't feel the same.
Through the car window, there's a little dust, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like as you say, it's disappointed, or just all of a sudden we notice our father is getting old, and some nostalgia thing.
Exactly, and even the character Lu, I think he's able to put on these different masks for many people, and he puts on a different mask for his family, or his friends, or his old friend, or business partner, and so with his family, he's put on this perfect fatherly mask or husband, but when they see him and there's of course that distance, right? They're still trying to get to know each other, trying to still understand each other, and I hope in that first, the second half of the film, when Queenie comes into the picture, they start to try to learn how to work with one another, be with one another physically, and by the end, I hope they start to understand one another a bit better. Yeah, I think it was really important for this story to not fall into the trappings of like the wholesome immigrant, where society is against him. He's actually, he's a product of the toxic idea of, I think, the American dream. So I think he's able to, he's not the perfect father, perfect man. He sometimes lies a little bit, and I kind of wanted to create a sense that at a certain point you don't really know if he's telling the truth. Even in some scenes, even about the visa, I don't know, is that true? And I kind of wanted to keep that ambiguous and keep it up for discussion, but he's again someone who's able to blend into the situation to get what he needs at a certain point. Yeah, I think that sort of line was kind of guiding or hinting at this idea that you can be the most talented, ambitious immigrant, yet you may never achieve success. I think if he was in a different place at a different time, he would have achieved his dreams.
Maybe he has like a better life behind him, and
maybe.
now he's in another situation, another stage.
Yeah, I think so, and maybe this idea, as an immigrant in the U.S., there's not an equal playing field, and again, the idea of destiny and fate, sometimes, at least her perspective as she's talking to Queenie is, it might not be Lou's perspective, but it's her perspective that you can't change fate. We're stuck here. It's a bit more of the fatalist idea, but I think Lu is actually the opposite. He's the dreamer. But he maybe dreams too big, and he risks a bit too much. So I just wanted to show both sides of that perspective. Yeah, I think I want people to interpret the title as they will with the character, but I think it actually encapsulates both sides of it, whereas it's ironic and actually truth for him, because I think luck and good fortune is all about perspective, and it's all relative how we see ourselves to one another. And so I hope by the end of the film he sees that he is actually indeed lucky. Yeah, I mean, I think especially in the US cinema especially, I think it tends to avoid stories about the working class. I think a lot of European cinema and world cinema actually does a great job of digging into these stories of the blue collar worker, but I think maybe of course over the many decades of US films there's been a lot of films, but I think recently there's been a trend to avoid sort of these stories, and I thought there was actually a good time and place. This feels like a time capsule of this moment of like the post-pandemic delivery driver, of sort of this exploitation of the that service industry, and hopefully maybe in 20 years from now you can look back on this film and that this is a moment in time of what people were going through, of this one story, and I hope it just humanizes again that service worker, and I think. Again, it's if they're suffering, I think I don't know. That's storytelling. That's I think to try to make a film that avoids that truth, I think is, I don't know. It doesn't feel like that interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, with him, we just sent him the script to his manager, and she passed it on to him and to Chen, and he just said, he felt this was a story he was ready to tell, or to take on a character he was ready to play, because he just became a father 8 or 9 years ago, and the character is the father of a 7-year-old, so he felt quite connected to this man. This is really a father-daughter story to me more than a bicycle thief's story. I think that's the emotional core and engine of the film, is these two characters. And working with him is amazing. He's a superstar. He's so talented. I kind of and he's incredible. He's like just so kind and generous, and he he just took the character and we discussed it, and he just became him. You know, he blended into the background. He sort of, you know, his physicality is kind of what sold it for me. How he moves through the city was quite incredible, and I just got to watch it from behind the camera.
Okay.